everyone, it's the Miserable Movie Man back again with another video. So, I like a lot of old movies, as you know, and I also like some really old movies. And not a lot of people, I would say, probably in the world, know that there was an original miniseries of Jason Bourne that came out in 1988 before the 2002 Matt Damon film. So I guess technically the Matt Damon film is considered a remake, but the more I speak to people, the more I realize that there's only a select few of us who know this.
I did not know that.
So today I will be doing a video on 5 reasons I prefer the original 1988 Jason Bourne miniseries. So let's start with probably the most glaring reason for me. Reason number 1, the 1988 miniseries had way better actors and acting, in my opinion. If you look it up, it has Richard Chamberlain in the lead role as Jason Bourne, the absolutely gorgeous Jaclyn Smith as Marie. It's got Denham Elliott, Anthony Quayle, Donald Moffat, and Peter Vaughan, and they all give amazing performances in this film.
Now see, that's acting.
I mean, if you compare them to Matt Damon, Franco Potente, I mean, people could say, yeah, Chris Cooper and Brian Cox are great actors, but really, to me, Cooper and Cox kind of phone it in. Cooper's kind of, pretty limited, one-dimensional, just a bit angry that Bourne has got loose. But if you look at the acting for, and I think Franco Potente wasn't even that great as Marie. Matt Damon is a little bit one-dimensional for me. But if you look at the acting from Richard Chamberlain, it's amazing. He really does give an incredible performance. Even Jaclyn Smith as the traditional 80s damsel in distress does have a little bit of an arc, and she gets to show herself quite a bit in terms of the range of emotions that she has. It's got the legendary and always excellent Denham Elliott in it. Anthony Quayle is great. Donald Moffat is great. It even has Wolf Kahler and Terry Richards from Indiana Jones. So I mean, how cool is that? For me, Damon really just shouted a couple of times. He doesn't know who he is.
And Matt Damon. Matt Damon.
But Richard Chamberlain gives us an absolute emotional roller coaster. I mean, he gave such good acting that he was nominated for a Golden Globe for his performance. If you watch it, I think he just captivates you from the start, in terms of this tortured, troubled man that's really trying to find out who he is, what his past is, why he's there. Damon, to me, sometimes seems to be going through the motions a little bit. I mean, maybe that's kind of the way the character was written, but the acting, for me, in the original TV miniseries is far better, and you can't compare it to the remake. The remake is not that good, in my opinion. So the acting, for me, was way better. Reason number 2, it's much more faithful to the book, and I think a much smarter film. Pretty early on, Chamberlain as Bourne figures out that he's an assassin, and he wants to know why he's an assassin and what he's doing. I mean, Matt Damon seems to take ages to figure it out, despite all the clues he's given. I mean, he has a stash box full of money, multiple passports. He can kill people very easily. He can scope out rooms, and he's like, who am I? Who am I? Who could I be? Who could I be? I mean, who did he think he was? Did he think he was a postman? A milkman?
And Matt Damon. Matt Damon.
I mean, then he gets confused between the dual identities. It's pretty, I mean, to me, it's a pretty sad indictment that the character wasn't written with any kind of intelligence. But if you compare that to the Chamberlain version, immediately on, I mean, Denham Elliott tells him to break down the gun and kind of says, there's a reason why people have your skills. But yeah, I do think it's definitely much better in that respect. It's more faithful to the book. It's got more intrigue. It's a real quest for Richard Chamberlain. Bourne, is the identity, and I think Chamberlain figures that out. He trains hard to get back into shape, and he really sells to me being a top spy. I mean, Jason Bourne in the miniseries is kind of the experienced spy that you would expect to see. Matt Damon, he seems way too young, basically like a new Marine recruit.
He's just a kid!
didn't really sell the master assassin to me. Yeah, he's got some skills, but didn't sell it to me as well as Chamberlain did. And also, even though I think Matt Damon does take people out pretty well, if you watch the original miniseries, Chamberlain is cold. He is stone cold. His assassin mode, he's ruthless and cold and smart. And he plays sort of little schemes and tricks on how he gets to talk to people and meet people and get information. And of course, the book was a huge bestseller, and that's why they adapted it into miniseries and tried to be as faithful as possible. Now, I know that when Doug Liman got the chance to direct the remake, it's something he really wanted to do. He persuaded Ludlum to give him the rights, and then on top of that, he told Tony Gilroy, who's a good writer. I mean, I'll give him his props. He's a good writer, but he told him not to read the book and write, like an action adventure story. So
Why would he do that?
it's really its own thing. It's kind of Bourne identity. I wouldn't say name only. It does take a few elements from the book, but I thought the story and the arc and the resolutions were way better in the miniseries than the 2002 remake. So reason number 3, no shaky cam. I mean, it was unique and new to the time, and I think some audiences really loved it. I had grown up watching all of the old 70s and 80s martial arts films, both in the West and the East. So the Hong Kong versions, the American versions as well. I love martial arts films. I've seen hundreds of them, and I want to see what the actors are doing. I don't want such insanely quick cuts and moves so that I get motion sickness. I want to see the real skill on show. And
Kung Fu's Kung Fu. It's not child's play.
yeah, I know Matt Damon trained significantly in Filipino martial arts for this. A Screamer and other things, and he had Dan Inosanto train him. But I want to see the technicality of it. I much prefer the wide shots and seeing the moves come off. So yeah, it was great and new for the time, but I didn't really enjoy the fighting. If you look at the original TV miniseries, the fighting is okay. It's not bad. It's kind of an 80s style fighting, and Bourne is a bit older in that, so you don't get quite the superhuman efforts. But one thing in that, Bourne is not superhuman in the miniseries. He gets beaten up a lot. He gets his fingers slammed in doors, and he is captured a couple of times, and he manages to always find a way out. He does have skills. He is able to take people down. There are some great moments in it, but I like the fact that in the original miniseries, Bourne is not superhuman. You can see that he, give him an overwhelming set of odds, he will struggle, but he'll have to use his brains to figure his way out. Whereas in the remake, Matt Damon just seemed invincible. Even when he's going up against the other Treadstone guys,
Maybe he's invincible.
he seemed to take them out pretty easily. And of course, there's a famous scene where he uses the pen. But even that scene, the guy that was trying to shoot him breaks through the window first with the gun and then realizes the Bourne is next to him. It's just silliness like that I think add into my disruption of suspension of disbelief. Whereas in the original miniseries, Bourne gets beaten up and gets captured and has to try and take people out and figure out sort of disguises and ways around things, and you see a lot more of that. So the sort of stylistic fighting elements, while cool, I much preferred the no shaky cam old school style from the miniseries. Reason number 4 for me, the romance is much more believable and handled way better in the miniseries in 1988 than 2002.
True love.
I think Franca Potente is a bit strange here. She goes with him for money, but then she sees him beat people up, and she sees him, and she kind of flip-flops a lot. She's with him, then she's not with him. She's freaked out when people have a photo from her from the consulate, but then she's okay to go with him, and then, they're together. He seems to get into her. He says she's the only person he knows. I thought that was probably the best line in the film, but other than that, his attraction to her didn't really come across very well. And then later on, again, she flips on him when she realizes the police have a photo of her, where, I mean, the consulate photo seemed to be okay, but the police photo wasn't.
She's crazy.
It didn't make a lot of sense. That romance was kind of strange to me. Whereas in the miniseries, Marie is captured by Bourne and taken as a hostage and used in kind of a ruthless way. But, she kind of starts to see little elements of his character that convince her that he's not a cold-blooded killer. He's not the master killer and assassin of the innocent that, the papers and the news sort of claims him to be. And yes, she does have a bit of Stockholm syndrome. And yes, I think Jacqueline Smith was a bit more of a, slightly better than generic, but somewhat generic 80s female sort of damsel. But, she really, after she sort of gets to know him a little bit, sees him for who he is, and really, she is the catalyst to make him believe in himself. And that arc was, that romantic arc was great. And I'll elaborate a little bit on that point in number 5, but...
Just get on with it.
Seeing her fall in love with him and want to stay with him and helping him to go through his quest and recover who he is was way more believable in the 1988 version versus the 2002 version. It's funny, at one point, Matt Damon takes people out in the 2002 version, and Marie is kind of in shock in the corner, like, watching this unfold. And then when the guy is unconscious, then she starts to get angry and sort of, gets all high and mighty and starts to try and kick him and say, why have you got this? Who are you? And starts screaming at him. And that kind of anger and that kind of, those beats just seem quite misplaced. So, yeah, I much prefer the romance in the original TV series. And reason number 5, I think in the TV series and the book, Jason Bourne has a much more believable arc. He wakes up, doesn't know who he is, tells himself, is he a killer, but he doesn't want to be a killer. And several times he's confronted with evidence that makes him really question who he is and think, does he have any say? I mean, if he feels differently, can he be a different person?
Or a whole new personality.
And that was the gist of the book. I think that's how Ludlum wrote it, because there was a famous case of someone who had amnesia and lived a different life. And I think even maybe Ludlum himself had a small bout of it at one point or something, and maybe that's what inspired him to write the book. But it's a much more believable arc to me in the miniseries. He's conflicted. He wants to not believe that he wants to believe that he's not a killer. But again, it keeps coming back to him that perhaps he is. And he has times where he wavers, self-doubt. And as I said in the previous point, Jacqueline Smith is the one who believes in him from when she sort of spends time with him and sees him. And she's the one who keeps pushing him from doubting himself too much. That arc and the way it resolves itself and how he finds more information and then ends up kind of being okay with who he is and what the mission was supposed to be with the original Treadstone 71. That arc is way more believable in the miniseries than it is in the 2002 film. I mean, really, Matt Damon...
And Matt Damon. Matt Damon.
Doesn't care too much. There's one line where he says, it doesn't matter who I was before, but most of the time, he finds out he's a weapon in the US government, and he just wants to not be a weapon in the US government. He doesn't seem to want to know who he was before, why he was there, what he was set to, what his past is. He just wants to leave all that behind. And that to me didn't really ring true at all. It didn't seem that believable. Whereas Richard Chamberlain as Jason Bourne is desperate to find out, who he is, why he's there. Is he really a killer? Is that the person who he has to be now going forwards? All of those nuances and those plot points. And yeah, you can say that it was kind of resolved in the Matt Damon films and the sequels to some degree. But again, the Matt Damon films are not based on the book in many ways. I mean, there are some similar touch points and some similar names, but the 1988 miniseries really tried to stay faithful to the book, and it was a huge event. I mean, the show was at 2-hour episodes that did pretty well.
It was huge in the 80s.
But I really thought the arc was better. I thought it was much more believable. I thought Chamberlain gives a better performance, and there's way more plot points to kind of give it a true emotional arc and a true, individual character story versus you kind of look at Matt Damon's version. He wakes up, he kills some people, figures out who he is, doesn't want to be that person, kills some more people, and then goes off in the sunset. That didn't have the same impact and resonance to me. So there you have it. Those are 5 reasons why I preferred the original Jason Bourne TV miniseries, The Bourne Identity with Richard Chamberlain, over the 2002 Matt Damon remake.
Ooh, pointless nostalgia.
Now, I will say the 2002 version is a great film. It's its own kind of thing. Got good action, good stunts, new techniques and new camera styles, and I'll watch it whenever it's on, and it spawned, a huge franchise and some, great films to follow it. But I will have a soft spot for the original. For folks that didn't know there was an original, as I said, in the words of Michael Caine, not a lot of people know that. Please go check it out. I think it's available on Amazon. Let me know what you think. And yes, it is quite 80s. You will see a lot of elements you think, oh, that's a bit old school, a bit cheesy, a bit 80s, and you can't really get away from that. But, if you look a bit deeper, as I said,
Deeper. You've got to go deeper.
there are some reasons to enjoy it, and there are some reasons where it's better, I think, than the remake. So that's it. Let me know what you think in the comments below. Do you agree? Do you disagree? Have you seen the 1988 original TV miniseries? Did you even know it was there? If you've seen it, what did you think? If you've got some other points that I didn't make or other things that you think I missed out on, let me know in the comments. I look forward to hearing from you. As always, please like, share, and subscribe to help the channel, and catch you next time.